right, so just in case that last movie didn't work, here's just two slides that show you a swing not in the surface temperature, but in the amount of ice that's covering the North Pole. And you can see that between 1980 and 2012, same time of year, the Arctic has lost more than a third of summer sea ice volume since a decade ago, and even more. It's only a fifth now of what it was since 1980. Things are happening, and of course, when ice melts, if it's floating on top of water, that's fun. You're not going to change the level of the water. Like if your ice melts in a glass, that's fun. You don't change the level of the water in the glass. But if ice melts from on land and flows into the ocean, you're going to have a rise in sea level, which is one of the major concerns about climate change. Anyway, but this part is more graphs. There's more graphs and a little bit of visual understanding of the issue. What we have here is a record since 800,000 years before the present, BP, of carbon dioxide concentrations. And you can see they go up and down, up and down, up and down. And if you add in the historical record of temperature, you can see that the up and down, up and down, up and down temperature has followed the up and down of carbon dioxide concentration. You can see that the temperature rise comes up a little, maybe just slightly after the carbon dioxide concentration. That's what it looks like to me. But anyway, if you were to tack the present on here, it would barely move the x-axis here because it's 100,000 years. And if I was to put the most few recent years on here, like I'm doing now, look at what the carbon dioxide concentration just zooms up to. In the historical record, I mean, it's never been above like 300 or so. And now it's already 400. There is still a public interest organization called 350.org. 350.org I thought was one of the dumbest names for an organization because nobody knew what it meant. Who knows what it meant? Okay, well now you can tell it. It meant we have to keep the concentration of carbon dioxide below 350 parts per million in the atmosphere or there's going to be a crisis. Well, tell you what, we've already got a crisis. It's past that, according to 350.org. And I think they have good reason to say that a lot of things are going to change even if we stop emissions of global warming gases. So that's 2013. Let's tack on a few more years. Oh, yes. All right. The current rate of increase after 40 more years will be way up to 600, and that's just off the charts of the historical record. It's dangerous. It can and would be bad. We need to try and stop that. In the movie, An Inconvenient Truth that Al Gore did, Al Gore has to come over and get on like a crane-like thing to go up with his physical, not laser pointer, to follow that. It's a very dramatic part of the movie. Anyway, so that's just carbon dioxide, and one way of looking at it visually, that things are really different than they ever have been before. Another thing is watch the distribution of temperature events change throughout time. All right, so this is what the average has been in 1951 to 1980, this whole time. You have an average temperature, in the weather forecast, the average temperature for today is, and then the difference between the average temperature and the actual recorded high temperature is, if it's a lower temperature that you experience than average, you put a blue dot here in the graph, and you put it according to how far below the average today's temperature was. If it's a higher temperature today than the average, we color it red, and we fill in this area under here a little bit with the red. So this is the average for, what is that, 50s, 60s, 70s, 3 decades. The decade of 1981, after it, to 1991, you can see already the temperature bands are shifting so that they're a little more, about, I don't know, quarter degree higher on average than it used to be. And then here, the mean of the curve is about 1 for 1991 to 2001. That's 2 decades ago or so. The last decade, 2001 to 2000, it's just creeping up. And a lot of people say that 2 degrees Celsius is a threshold at which we're going to start seeing serious melting of glaciers, if that's the change in the overall average from 1951 maybe to now. Once we get to 2 degrees Celsius, which is 3.6 degrees Fahrenheit, it's something to worry about. That's what they say. But of course, that number's got to have a lot of wiggle room. So whenever you see a news report that says, we have to keep it under exactly 3.6 degrees Fahrenheit, know that they only chose that because 2 degrees Celsius is what most of the world was thinking of, and 2, 2.5, 1.5, it's all that fits in that range. All right. So, interesting fact that the extreme temperature events used to cover 1/10 of 1% of the Earth. Now they cover 10% of the Earth that has extreme temperature events, more than 3 degrees different from average for a summer. All right. So, one more thing to know in this part, where the warmth is going. Water absorbs and keeps heat better than land. Well, ice reflects it because it's reflective, and continents. And 93.4% of warming is going in the ocean, which is really causing problems for marine ecosystems. A longer talk I'm not going to give here. But it also suggests that once water starts melting on glaciers, it's going to stay melted and then start melting away and perhaps causing more calving of glaciers and rise of sea levels. All right. Another just way of looking at the heat content of oceans. The long line here is the, I guess, 5-year moving average, and pentadal average, that's 5 years, right? And then there's the yearly average, which is sort of taken in mid-2000s, as well as the 3-month average. And all these numbers are showing that there's just a steady, monotonic, which means ever-increasing increase in the amount of heat in the oceans. And this slide just compares it to the heating of the land, etc. The oceans, beginning of the food chain for a lot of species and ourselves, taking a big hit, changing the pH, changing what can grow in the oceans in different places, messing up fishing, etc. And that's the end of part 3.